Thank you so much, Anne, for having me, and thank you so much, Emmanuel College. I am very, very excited to be here today. In fact, I had no idea that there was going to be so many students. So bear with me. But now, during today's presentation, I'm happy for you guys to ask me questions at any time, okay? Because I know that from experience as a student, you have many questions in your mind, and obviously you want to know the truth of how to survive in an interview. Would that be right? Yeah? Cool, cool. Now put your hand up if you are working at the moment. Do you like your job? Kind of? Yeah, no? Okay. Well, along your lifetime, you may go through many different jobs, many different interviews, but the more you do them, the more confident you're going to be, and the higher chance is that you're going to achieve your dream job. So, just to give you a bit of background on my history and how I got here today. I'm the director of 2 companies on the Gold Coast, Exceptional Tuition and Resumes, and Exceptional Training. So Exceptional Tuition and Resumes offers academic tutoring for university and high school students across all subjects. So if any of you guys are struggling to get through maths or economics or any of those hard subjects, we have tutors that can help you. And we also write resumes for job seekers who are going into their first job, or they're going to the mines, or they're going to any kind of new employment. And then Exceptional Training is another company whereby we develop resources for all of the colleges. So all the ones, if you decide after year 12 that you don't want to go to uni, but you want to study, say, a diploma or advanced diplomas, we develop those resources. So today, what I'm going to do is take you through a presentation which we use in Exceptional Tuition and Resumes, specifically for job seekers who need to understand why interviews exist and how you can really excel in this area, because interviews can be daunting. Put your hand up if you find interviews a little bit nerve-wracking at the moment. Do you wish that you could get into the mind of your employer and understand what they're thinking about you when you walk in that door and when you say goodbye? Well, that's what I'm going to go through today. So these are a few topics which I'll be covering. So, for example, what are interviews? How long should interviews run for? What questions can be asked? How should I dress? Going in prepared, answering questions, and during the interview and the post-interview. So, first of all, job interviews. Now, it's important for you to understand that the interview process is within the selection section of human resources. So, first of all, when you're applying for a job, let's say you've walked past a shop window in Surfers Paradise, and you've seen it says, casual retail assistant required, apply immediately. So you've put your resume in, and you've put a cover letter, and the employer has gone through those documents and they've had a read, and they've decided, okay, let's decide whether this person matches what they say on paper. So who in here has a resume at the moment? Yeah? Are you happy with your resume?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, good. So with your resume, make sure when you write your resume that you tailor it towards the particular job you're going for. So if you are going for a casual retail assistant, make sure that all the language in that document suits that particular role. Now, once you've gotten past the written stage of getting past those documents, the interview is where the employer is going to size you up and say, are you what you say you are on paper? So, are you that person who has completed year 10, who has a passionate attitude towards your classes? Are you that person who has the motivation and drive to go through in your career? Because the interview process is basically where the employer is thinking about you from a personal perspective. They're trying to determine, do you have the correct attitude towards the job that you're going for? Do you have the correct motivation? Do you have an ambition which you'd like to achieve through the company? So a lot of successful people in their careers start right at the bottom. They do their little jobs, but if they are committed, they will grow with the company. And that's what employers are looking for right at the beginning. Can you grow with the company, and can you match the culture of the company through who you are as a person? Because there's one saying which I use when I'm recruiting tutors for my business. I hire character, but I train skill. Now think about that. Hire character, train skill. So when I'm recruiting, I look for people who match the company and what we stand for. So do we have people who are exceptional, who are bright in their industry field and their education area, but do they also have the passion for what they're doing And if they do, then they match the company, and that's the kind of person I want to recruit. So that's what a lot of employers will be looking for when you're in the interview process. Do you match them in the long term? Do you have the same mindset as the employer? If you do, then that's the right job for you. Now, with job interviews, who has done an interview recently? Anyone? Yep, how long was your interview? 20 minutes. Question, did you get the job? Yep, congratulations. So that's an excellent example of 20 minutes. Now, as students, if you can last for a minimum of 20 minutes and anywhere up to, say, an hour and a half, you pretty much got the interview in the bag. Now, I can tell you from experience that I went down to Melbourne about 2 weeks ago because our company is expanding to Melbourne, and I was running interview after interview after interview, and the people who I enjoyed meeting stayed with me for about an hour, but the ones that I didn't want to progress to the next stage, I got them out within 10 minutes. Now, how's that? 10 minutes, that's pretty quick, isn't it? It's duck in, duck out. So what you want to do is to excel in your interviews, you need to be able to build a relationship with your employer really quickly. And when we're saying the relationship, we're talking about, making them like you straight away. Have you ever thought about that? Making yourself likable? Being able to treat the employer like they are your friend, but remain professional at all times. Because it's really important. Remember, when you're applying for jobs, you are competing against, maybe 10, 20, maybe 30 candidates, all for that one job. So you've got to think, how do I become a friend with the employer so that they want to work with me in the long term? You also need to think about how can you get along with your employer. So who in here has a good sense of humour? Some of you, yeah? That's a good thing, okay? That's an asset. So if you can make the employer smile within, say, the first couple of minutes of your interview, you know that they are going to like you, and more likely they're going to want to meet you again. Or maybe they'll give you a job on the spot. So it's important to think about the duration and how much time you have to make that really quick impression. Now, when you're in an interview, employers can ask you certain types of questions. However, you've got to look at things from a legal perspective. Now, have you all heard of the Anti-Discrimination Act before? Yep. Okay, so what that act says is it defines discrimination as the unfavourable treatment of employees based on a personal characteristic. So when they're going through the interview process, an employer cannot ask you questions which discriminate against you and put you in that unfavourable position. So when we're talking about this, it's important for them to focus on the job primarily. So what does the job do and how is it relevant to you as the applicant? So, for example, they may ask you about, the name of the company and the position which you've worked in previously, and they will ask you questions about your role. So, for example, what did you do within that role? What was your responsibilities? Were you able to supervise in any capacity? And even though you may be in year 10, it's quite normal for year 10 students to achieve some kind of responsibility, especially if you're working in maybe a fast food environment. Do you know what I mean? So always think to yourself that age is not a barrier when you're applying for employment or if you're trying to grow your career. Use age as your benefit. Also, think about questions like, what were your expectations of the job? So an employer may say to you, in your past employment, what did you hope to achieve and did you achieve it? And that sort of question will give you the opportunity to demonstrate your initiative and your ability to, make decisions and see your career as a long term within the business, okay? So that's really important. Also, what major challenges and problems did you face? So what that particular question is asking you is to demonstrate, are you a problem solver? Okay, so put your hand up in here if you are a problem solver, that you can think outside the box. Yes? Okay, that's a great asset to have. Because remember, working in a job is different to being in a school environment. So you've got to be able to think on your feet, and you've got to be able to think, how can I fix the problem quickly and in a courteous manner? Okay, so those sort of questions are asking you to demonstrate your capability to fix a problem. Also, what have you learned from your mistakes? So again, this sort of question is an employer asking you to think positively, because who wants to work with an employee who's negative? Anyone at all? Probably not. Hey, you want to be around people who are positive, who can, be resilient in times of change and problems. So that's what you want to become as a job seeker, someone who's really positively minded. And, if you apply for a job and you get knocked back a few times, keep on applying. I can give you an example. Back when I was, 21, and I was graduating from university, and have you heard of graduate positions? So graduate positions is where you get recruited straight after university and you work with a big corporate environment. Now, back when I was 21, when I was still learning and establishing my career, it took me 40 applications until I nailed my first graduate position. Can you believe it? 40 times it took me. And for every application, it takes almost 4 to 5 hours to apply. So you do the math, and you see how many times you can be rejected. But if you stay passionate and persistent, you will achieve your goal. And, working in that role was fabulous. It taught me, how to be strong in business, how to work with different age groups, how to work in projects. But the main thing is I never gave up. And once I got in the interview, the rest was history. It was easy after that. So that's what you got to do, keep on persisting. And also, what was most rewarding and least rewarding? So this is an employer asking you to think about, reflectively about your past career, what you achieved from it and what you think you could achieve in the future. Now, another aspect of when you're doing an interview is where an employer will ask you about yourself personally. So have you guys heard of a thing called a SWOT analysis? Yeah. Have you done a personal SWOT analysis? Where you think about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and your threats. So what I do is when people come to me for a job interview and I'm sitting there determining, okay, should they be in the company, where I can put them, I ask them straight away, what are your strengths? So what are you good at? So that in my mind as an employer, I can allocate them to somewhere which they will be thriving in, rather than putting them into a job which they will suffer. So that's one question I always ask. And I always ask the people who work with me, what is their weakness as well? Because I want to see, okay, can I take this weakness? So, for example, if they are not good on the phone, how can I train them to become confident? Because one of the most important things as a job seeker is to be aware of your personal strengths and your weaknesses, and to try to turn your weaknesses into a strength down the track. Would you agree? As a positive way to conduct yourself as a job seeker? Yeah, so that's what I do. So I like to nurture my interns. So I take on a few university interns each year, and I train them. I train them in whatever they would like to train in. Another thing I like to ask is also about the interests of the employee. So I ask them, what would they like to achieve, or what are they passionate about? Because if you can find an employer who is nurturing, that's a really good thing, because you can grow personally with your employer. So when you are looking for employers, look for those kind of employers who are caring at the end of the day. There's a question here. Are you nice? Has anyone ever asked you that in an interview? I always ask it. I always ask it because I want to see what a person thinks about themselves. And if they can give me a confident answer to say why they are nice or how they are nice, straight away I think, okay, if they're nice to me and they can prove that, they can do this for my customers as well. So they will look after all of my students with the same nurturing attitude. So at the end of the day, it's really important to develop a positive attitude to everything you do in employment. And you may, some of you may have jobs which you don't like, and that's perfectly okay. But as long as you maintain professionalism and a good attitude, that job will never be a bad thing in the long run. In fact, it'll be something which you learn from. Also, another question I like to ask is, do you work well with other people? Now, put your hand up if you're a team player in here. Yeah? Put your hand up if you like to do things on your own instead. Some of you? Yeah? So, now that you know your sort of orientation, that will also help you to determine whether you are better as a leader or as a follower, as someone in the background, things like that. Because it's really, really important when you are doing any kind of job or applying for a job to understand yourself as a person and how you function with other people. Because in the business world, it's both what you know and who you know, not just one or the other. It's both what you know and who you know. So you need to be able to be confident in developing relationships with people, resolving problems, and working together and leading where you have to. Okay? What else? And then the other one is, how would you describe the pace at which you work at? So this question is basically asking you, are you fast working? Are you slow? Do you like to work at a moderate pace? Things like that. Because again, this will impact which job your employer decides to put you in. So you need to understand that, you know, what you do in the school environment can be translated to the work environment as well. So this is important, to understand yourself personally before you apply for any jobs. Also, when you are applying for a job, it's important that you have some questions relating to the role itself. So for example, the common question is, what interests you about this job? So that first question, and probably one of the most important questions asking is, why are you applying for the job? What is your real reason? So when you go into an interview, you want to tell the employer the honest truth of your motivation, because they want to determine whether you are worthwhile being in the company, whether they can keep you long term, or whether you're going to go as soon as you graduate from year 12. So I think being really honest as an employee and telling them this is why I want to work for you is important. Often people will come to interviews with me and they will already have researched who I am as the director. And when they do that research, I know straight away that they're interested, because they'll often say things to me that I haven't told them before. So picking up on, you know, they want to work with me specifically is a good thing. If someone says to me they want to work with Exceptional because they've heard positive things about the company, that's a good thing as well. Because, you know, you've left a positive impression on any potential job seekers. So make sure when you're asked that question that you say it straight out, what you want to, you know, why you want to work with that employer, and be really honest from the start. Also, the question is important, why should we hire you? So that question is giving you the opportunity to basically sell yourself in a really confident manner. So as we were saying before, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses and translating that when you talk to the employer. Because, as I said, you're going to be competing against 10, 20, 30, maybe more candidates. So you need to think, what is your particular unique trait that makes you the best employee for the job? Okay? Now, another question which may come from your employer when you are being asked is, what is your long-term career goal? Have you ever had that before? Yeah. So if you are asked that question, what they are trying to determine in their mind is, can they keep you and grow you with the company? So when I worked in IBM all those years ago, I was put through some really, really intensive training for the first few weeks. And what that training did is it moulded me towards the company culture of IBM. Because IBM is a consulting company and they work on big national and international projects. So that training gave me the opportunity to determine, okay, do I match this company? Can I be moulded to become that particular employee, etc., etc. So you need to, identify to the employer long term, will you be staying with them or are you short term? Okay, this is really time is essence when you are an employer looking for the right employees. Okay, also that brings me on to questions about your future. So, have you thought about whether you will be going to university yet? Some of you? Yeah. University it's a great thing. It's necessary nowadays if you're going to go into a particular kind of role. So you need to determine in your mind, what kind of degree would suit you, and what kind of jobs would also match your particular field. So as a word of advice, I would choose a degree which is a growing degree and where the jobs are really, really present in the newspapers, for example. So if you go and grab the Career One newspaper, have a look and see which jobs are most common. Go on to seek.com and have a look at those jobs, because you want to make sure that you're not going into a career that's going to die in the long term. So find find the job which is going to be sustainable for you in the long term. What else? We talked about career goals. What else? Where do you see yourself in 5 years from now? So that's another question in which an employer is determining, okay, do you have any goals yourself, or are you just living in the moment? So you want to be able to tell them that yes, you've thought ahead. Yes, you've thought about even your personal goals. So put your hand up. Have any of you ever decided to purchase a property or even thought about it? Yeah, you guys have? Yeah. Why have you decided to think about it right now? No, that's okay. See, when I was in your spot, when I was in year 10, I was already thinking about property goals. I was thinking about career goals. I was thinking about family goals, all that sort of thing. And as I said before, age should never be a barrier. So some of you, when you hit 18 or 19, you might be able to achieve your first goal, and that would be really, really exciting if you can do that. But always have a long-term plan for your career and think about, what kind of areas can you grow with. So in my career, I decided, that I wanted to go to university, I wanted to go to TAFE, I wanted to try a few different jobs, see what my strengths were, what my weaknesses are. And then when I hit 21, I said, yes, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, and I did. And I have not looked back since, because it's the most exciting career for me personally, but it's something that obviously took a lot of risk, but I did it because I followed my heart and I followed a career plan. And, along the way, I did think about, property, and I thought about, family down the track, but you've got to think of your life as a job seeker as a whole and how it fits in with the rest of your life. It's really, really important. So yeah, having a long-term plan is something which you should consider mentioning in your interview with any kind of employer, because if they can't give you the job, they might be able to refer you to someone else who has a similar position. And as I said to you, a lot of jobs go from word of mouth. It's what you know and it's who you know at the same time. You might also, when you're doing a job interview, have some behavioural questions. So have you ever had a question where an employer has asked you to think about an issue you've had at work? So it doesn't matter. Are you guys all working in hospitality or retail at the moment? Or supermarkets? Yep, some of you, yep, I remember. I did my time in Woolworths for 3 years, so I know what it's like. A question might have been asked, how do you deal with a difficult customer at a checkout? So have you ever experienced that before? Or have you ever had someone shout at you when you're at the checkout? So what the employee is asking for is, how did you respond to that situation? How did you turn a negative experience into something positive where you grew? Because employers that, meet positive-minded job seekers are more likely to hire you because they see that you can grow with the company at the end of the day, okay? So think about how you will frame a negative experience into a positive one and show that you're really resilient. Also, you'll need to be prepared to provide detailed responses, including specific examples. So a question could be, tell me about a situation where you wanted to leave, however you stayed, and what was that situation? And that sort of question is going to be asking, okay, are you persistent? Are you patient? Things like that, okay? So you've got to think about, what are the values of the company, okay? So what does the company really hold high up on their pedestal? And how do you, as a job seeker, frame yourself so that you match those values? Because employers want people who can work with them long term and who can operate in a way that matches the company. Because as a job seeker, remember, you are representing your company in such a way, so you need to be able to mould yourself in a really positive manner to meet their values. So, what else? Also, you can emphasise what you can do to benefit the company as well. So, thinking about, your strengths and weaknesses. So, for example, if you are a people person, so if any of you are really, really social, maybe you could say to the employer, I have a lot of friends who would be interested in coming to the business. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to think, what can you give to the employer to make them, feel interested in you? Because it's not just about what's written on your resume. It's also about what kind of a person you are and Can you share things with the employer? Okay? So think about being a giving employee, and that will help you in the long term to be, appreciated by the company. I can tell you from experience that the only reason I ever left any kind of job in the past was because I felt unappreciated. Apart from that, I would stay with the employer. So you've got to think about, as an employee, how can you, be appreciative and show that giving aspect to you, okay? Now, we were talking about before about the Anti-Discrimination Act, okay, and what discrimination is. So when you're in a job interview, have you ever been asked your age or anything about your culture before, or background? Sort of, yeah? Okay, so technically an employer is not really meant to ask you those questions because it's